Welcome to How to Sell More. Today we're discussing how to overcome your sales anxiety with Jeff Lerner, the man who went from a broke jazz musician to $100 million in online sales. Today, Jeff is the leader of Entre Institute and MaxRev, two different companies that both help entrepreneurs sell more. So with that said, I'm Mark Traeger. Let's get into it. So Jeff, in your business experience, of course, you've built up Entre Institute, which is on pace to hit $100 million in annual revenue, which is massive. But you also own this other business that you're a partner in that helps run sales floors. And so I think you're really uniquely positioned because obviously your background is in marketing. And so what are some challenges that you've experienced and help people overcome when it comes to connecting what marketing's doing with what sales actually needs to close?
I love the question, and I'm going to back it up with just a little bit of context. We were a totally bootstrapped company, right? So I started it with a $20,000 budget on a credit card, and like you said, we're on pace to hit $100 million in annual revenue in the next 12 to 18 months, and that's kind of like a bananas success story, right? So I had to figure out a lot about how to do scrappy, bootstrappy type marketing that would, to your point, really lead directly to sales. And because we're a bootstrap company, we have this like super scrappy sales focused ethos where we're sort of unapologetic about like, look, it's great to go out and build your brand or whatever. But if you're a bootstrap company and you're not converting clicks and eyeballs into dollars, then you're on borrowed time. But we're at the size now where we're bringing in people as we continue to grow that come from more of like the funded VC-backed world, where they don't have that same level of like, if I don't kill something today, I don't eat tonight, right? They're more like, well, we're burning through our Series B right now and trying to blah, blah, blah. And so internally, we're actually have this tension between people that are like, well, let's market and let's build the brand and let's tell the long story. And I'm like, but I've got this muscle that's just like, no, we have to sell now or else we'll die, right? And maybe that's not actually even that true anymore. But I like that those habits, you have to pry those habits out of my cold dead hands, so to speak. And so now in MaxRev, the sales service company that we have, we're very often having this conversation with marketers, with entrepreneurs of like, okay, I get that you're marketing. I get that you love your product. I get that, you would love to give a TED talk every day about the value of your product and whatnot. But like, if nobody's buying, your product is dying. But it's interesting in the market how I think product, like love of product can often turn into like, almost like embarrassment to overtly sell product. It's like, I love it too much, so I don't want to pimp it out. And it's like, well, damn it, if nobody's buying it, then, part of it is just getting people really okay with that every business is in the sales business. And so maybe that's where I would start, is almost just like a philosophical, gut check with people of like, how into selling are you? Like, do you think selling is awesome? Do you think selling is the ultimate superpower? Do you think selling is something that you can never be good enough at? Like, can you get fired up about sales? Because I know this is a super tactical show and we'll get into the tactics, but I think you kind of, like in my experience of working with different clients now through MaxRev, that you kind of have to challenge people sometimes to be like, listen, you want your problem to be something else because you don't want your problem to be that you suck at selling because you don't really like selling that much. So you don't want that to be a thing that you focus on. But like, until you get out of denial, we're not going to change the results. So for the audience, I hope you're really into selling, because if you're not, that's a bigger, deeper question that has to be resolved.
I want to jump in real quick on that because, I had a friend who was writing a book and I said, why are you writing the book? And he said, I need the book for my email content. I was like, what? Oh, yeah, I need to turn each chapter of my book into email content. Okay, well, so when's the email launching? Well, I haven't launched it yet because I haven't written the book. Well, how many people on the list? I haven't created that yet. Okay, so you're going to write the book to feed your email, and then the email is going to build the list. And who's going on the email? Well, I got to create an offer. You got to create an offer. Okay, you haven't done that yet. And who's going to find the offer? Well, it's going to come through your social media. How many followers do you have? Well, I haven't built my social media yet. And we went down all this rabbit hole. And I said, why are you doing all this? He's like, so I can get clients. I said, why don't you just go talk to people about what you're doing? He wanted to run a coaching program. And I was like, You're going to spend the next 9 months doing all of this stuff to get clients. Why don't you just tell people what you do and who you can help and say, I will help you. I will help you with your problem. I will take responsibility. And I think what it is I see this in myself. I'm afraid sometimes, and I think he was afraid either to put it out there or to ask, but more than that is actually to take ownership over someone else's problem, take ownership over the responsibility. And so we get lost in building these things that feel important when frankly, you just need to go out there and talk to people about stuff.
Oh, that's so true. And so that's like the inverse of the sales mentality. It's like, oh, I'm going to do the heaviest lift that produces the lowest yield first, rather than let's completely invert that. And that really gets to sales. I mean, I think that even the idea, like we were talking before the show about like pre-revenue companies, I actually think that's an oxymoron. Like the only thing that exists pre-revenue is like an idea and maybe a somewhat operationalized idea. It's not a business. It's not a company pre-revenue, right? Nothing happens till something gets sold. Here's what I guess I need to disclaim. I'll disclaim the rest of this conversation. I have no formal training as a salesperson. I have no credentials as a salesperson other than I've now sold almost $200 million in products online. So I guess that's a credential. But
just to fill in some of our listeners, you were a professional jazz musician, right? Like your background is not corporate or sales at all.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I was a professional jazz musician and occasional would-be musical theater actor and entrepreneurial, enthusiast. Because mostly I got into entrepreneurship because I played at all these rich people's houses. I played piano at their houses. And I was like, who are these people? They're like, I'm a jazz musician and they're just as free as I am. They go what they want, where they want, do what they want. But they own their home. I don't even know how I'm going to pay my rent. And by the way, their home is worth $9 million and their piano is worth more than my whole life. It turned out they were all entrepreneurs. They were company founders that could afford to have me play piano for their dinner parties. So that's how I got into it. But so I've given that appropriate disclaimer, but I will also say, just as a little bit of a backstory, when I got started, the reason I made the decision to go from interested in entrepreneurship to like full-time all in on entrepreneurship is because I ended up in a ton of debt. And so in my late 20s, I was about $495,000 debt because I had been trying to part-time it as an entrepreneur. And and that was back when they would give anybody with a pulse way more credit than they should. I had been able to borrow $500,000 to open up these franchise restaurants as a jazz musician with no successful experience as an entrepreneur doing entrepreneurship part-time. And I got 2 SBA loans to open up these restaurants. Horrible credit decision by a bank, horrible personal decision by a jazz musician, horrible outcome because I did it in 2007, the Great Recession, the economy crashed. So picture this, 29-year-old jazz musician is $500,000 in debt. And so what I did was I went online and I started learning about something called affiliate marketing that I'm sure much of your audience is familiar with. And so I go online and I start promoting these affiliate products and I'm making like a $10 commission and a $20 commission and a $40 commission. And I'm like, I am never going to dig out of $500,000 in debt making these tiny little commissions as an affiliate marketer, right? What I ended up doing was finding programs that had really, really big commission potential, like seminar programs, vacation travel programs, big ticket education products that had $5,000 or $10,000 commission potential in their affiliate programs. But you're not going to sell that just by like posting a piece of content with a link. You're going to have to get on the phone. I put a phone number opt-in. And so, as a tactic, I'll start right here. Are you capturing phone numbers with all of your leads? How many of us just do name and email, right? And we do the math in our mind of like, oh, well, if I capture name and email, if I add an optional phone value to the opt-in form, that might reduce opt-ins from 30% to 20%, right? And I don't want to give up that 10% just by adding an optional third field. Yeah, but what's your delivery rate? What's your inbox rate on the back end, right? Let's say you have a good list and you get 20% of your emails, you have a 20% open rate, right? Well, okay, so maybe you'd reduce the size of your list by a third if you were capturing phone numbers, which by the way, if it's optional, it wouldn't be that high, but let's say, but you actually construct an offer, you can get people on the phone and now your dollar per audience member, because if you're only ever emailing people and you're only ever nurturing that way, then, whatever, maybe you can generate $1 per month per name on your list. But as soon as you slap a phone team onto a list with a predictive dialer, now you can maybe generate $100 per name on your list.
Not only that, I mean, studies are showing that just generationally, especially the younger millennials and then even the Zs are much more open to text than even email. And so we already as businesses have to embrace this shift. I mean, if you are in a B2B business, a lot of times people in the research phase want to talk to someone. So it's good to have a phone number and a way to be able to speak to someone. So if you're older, I'm sure they want to talk to someone. If they're younger, they're not going to be answering your emails anyway. And so just being able to know these changes and then track everything can also help just on the back end of sales.
Yeah. And I don't actually think that's only a B2B statement. I think that actually modern B2C, it may be harder to get them on the phone, but it's just as effective once you do, I think. So anyway, that's a starting point. And going back to my story, I started capturing phone numbers and I started calling people. So instead of, sending emails with links to a $39, education program, I'd call people up and I'd be like, hey, my name is Jeff. That thing that you opted in for, I'm the guy that was behind that page. And so I will say, right out of the gate, because I had no sales skills whatsoever, no formal sales skills, but I'm a jazz musician. Like I'm an expressive, improvisatory, pretty open person. I'm always, I connect through sound. And so I would get on the phone and just have these really sort of untethered conversations of like, listen, I'm the guy behind that page. Okay, come on. You put your name and number into a page because you wanted to buy this affiliate product or whatever. And frankly, I don't know if you bought it or not, but if you did, thank you. I made like $7. I really appreciate it. But like, what do you really want? Like, what are you really after? And I would just get right into it. And what I found is my sort of flippancy, because I identified as a broke jazz musician, not as a successful B2B corporate sales executive or whatever, there was like no pressure. I wasn't really expecting myself to be any good at it. So I would have these really loose conversations where I would tell them straight up, be like, look, I'm a jazz musician, okay? Whatever problem you're having, because I was promoting online education products that were in either the business or wealth creation or investing niches. So I'd be like, obviously you're interested in making more money. Well, trust me, if there's anybody that needs to make more money, it's a jazz musician. And so I've probably already done some research that's relevant to whatever problem you're trying to solve. So like, thank you in advance if you bought my affiliate, whatever, but tell me what you're dealing with. Maybe I know something else that can help. And I would just have these conversations with people. And I broke like every rule in the book. Like I would let them talk for like 30 minutes and just let them talk. And I wasn't straight line method steering the conversation, or like, I didn't even know what I wasn't doing. I've learned a lot since, but I was just really, really real and really, really down to earth with people. And I remember the first time this guy, he owned a RV park in Arizona, because he had to go outside while I was on the call. And he was like, bro, it's so hot, man. I'm out here fixing this RV. It's like 120 degrees. And I remember the end of that call, he's like, I've been on the internet every night for 2 years or whatever. And you're the first person that I've actually talked to. So I think I'm going to do it. And he bought a $13,000 program, put a $4,500 commission in my pocket. And that changed my life. Because I realized right then the power of, the term sales is so scary to people. It's just authentic human connection with a genuine desire to problem solve and to serve, if for no other reason than just so they don't go online and say something bad about you. I think that sometimes the art of sales leads us awry into making it more ornate than it really is. The art of sales is just the art of human connection.
And so earlier on, you mentioned that you find that most entrepreneurs that you're working with and businesses that you're working with, they almost don't embrace sales. And so what would you recommend? What would be, you can be our physician and you can prescribe us how to get over this ailment. What is the easiest and best way just to break through this and embrace sales?
I mean, nobody's going to like this answer, but
no. Give us the painful one. Yeah. Give us the hard, truthful one.
The brain, I was literally thinking about this the other day. So the brain, we know the human brain is a normalizing machine. We will get used to anything over time. And so I was actually thinking about a conversation I had recently with someone about creating content. And they were like, it's hard. They were talking about how hard it is to like get in front of the camera and have something to say. And I was like, okay, well, I agree with that. Yeah, it's hard. That's fine. But why don't you just make the decision that twice a day for 15 minutes, you're going to turn a camera on and you're going to stand in front of it and you're going to say stuff. And whatever comes out, comes out. And you don't have to publish it. You can delete it. I don't care. But build the muscle of doing that twice a day. And eventually, what you currently think is so hard, it just won't be that hard anymore, right? I mean, there was a time when it was really hard to get me to brush my teeth because I just hated brushing my teeth. And I thought it was the most miserable thing in the world. Granted, I was like 4 years old or 6 years old or whatever. But now I'm quite religious about brushing my teeth twice a day, and it poses no challenge for me. The way to get more comfortable with selling is, like you said earlier, start talking to people about your thing and start making offers and start asking people to buy your thing. And if you just do that every day, Frank Kern says, make an offer every day. Dan Kennedy says, if you haven't offended someone with your aggressive marketing by noon every day, then you're not marketing hard enough, right? Like, there's really no substitute for it. That's why I started the conversation by saying, like, I think the real problem is, or the real challenge is people being precious about sales. It's not about actually building the muscle or learning the skills. I don't think there's people that are just bad at sales. I think there's just people that are more or less open to how important it is and more or less willing to do it as much as it needs to be done.
You mentioned the real turning point where you're like, wow, I just got $4,500 commission because all I did was spend all this time on the phone talking to people and making it happen. That obviously works at a really small scale when you're maybe starting out or, when you have a lot of time, but it's not scalable. It's not something that a business is going to be like, hey, let's just go ahead and plop everyone on the phone and just take as much time as you want. Or is it? Is it like that we're trying to over-engineer everything?
I agree. Yeah. I mean, I was totally unsophisticated and, just getting on the phone and letting people talk until they're done talking is not a scalable solution. But what I was very, very overt about, and I think because I started this way, I've sort of always done it naturally, is like people that get into any sort of relationship with me professionally, like as a prospect or an audience member, because I'm passionate about sales, because I'm vocal and transparent about sales, they're not surprised when I try to sell them something. Nobody's offended. They're like, oh, Jeff Lerner tried to sell me. It's like, yeah, have you ever seen his content? He talks about how entrepreneurship is like this, gladiator warfare that, if you want to win, you have to be willing to like stab the person in the heart or like, well, I mean, the difference is it's not zero sum. Like there's, good selling is win-win. Everybody wins. It's not like one person lives or one person dies. But the point is to like not be so freaking precious about it. And we live in this world where everyone's so worried about not offending anyone that it's like they feel awkward selling, making business happen. And so I think that you can market, if you think of the journey, like the marketing journey, right? You can market in a way that people know, okay, there's going to be a sale coming at some point. And when it comes, I'm not going to be surprised by it. I'm not going to be offended by it. I'm not going to say, oh, that's out of, congruence with the brand. If your brand is one that it is difficult to convert sales under, then you've created a weak brand. You've created a brand with a weak value proposition where people want all take and no give. A good branding and good marketing will make it so that when the sales conversation comes, it doesn't have to be letting somebody prattle on for 45 minutes. It can just be, hey, listen, I know that you're interested in this. I know we've literally given you as much value as we can possibly give you without charging you money. And at this point, it is not responsible to my company or to my employees or to my boss or even to the family that I have an obligation to feed for me to go any further without telling you, pull out your credit card, it's that time. Like if you've marketed the right way, those conversations are not only acceptable, they're actually like fun and they're even like lighthearted. Like, hey, you knew this was coming.
What makes them fun?
Because the person on the other side knows that it would be ridiculous to not want to buy from you right then.
Oh, so you just make it like so obviously hyperbolic that like for us to go any further with this would be just us. It would be obscene.
Yeah. I just rolled out a personal coaching offer on my website, which I do like no coaching. I used to do a lot of coaching. I don't do any coaching because I don't have time to do coaching, but I actually genuinely like coaching. So I put coaching back on my website and I said, I'm only available for 2 hours a week of coaching and I'm only doing it on weekends. So basically like I'll spend an hour or two on a Saturday or Sunday coaching people because I genuinely like it. I don't do it for money, but also I'm not going to do it for free. I'm going to charge for it.
Hold on. Talk about scarcity tactics there, eh?
Yeah. I mean, and admittedly, it's not fake scarcity. It's just genuinely like, I only have 2 hours a week to do this and it's not worth my time to do it more. Frankly, it's not even worth my time on a purely quantitative basis to do it all. I just genuinely enjoy it. And so there's that. I mean, that's a nice angle, a nice positioning. But like I was talking to a guy and he's like, hey, can I talk to you about my thing? And I said, okay, listen, and this is a guy I know pretty well. I said, okay, yes, you totally can talk to me about your thing one time. But I want you to understand, we're going to get on the phone. I'm going to get you addicted to talking to me about your thing so that any future time you want to talk to me about your thing, you have to go on my website and buy a coaching session. Like, so just a heads up, if you take the call with me, the result is that you're going to be spending money with me on a go forward basis. I had that one call like 2 hours ago. And he's already gone on my website and booked a session for next month as part of a paid package for coaching sessions. So it's like, he wasn't offended. There was no awkwardness. I'd already given that heads up. Like, dude, I'm totally going to sell you. You know, I just think people, I don't know, they're like nervous about it. And yet it's so ironic though, because show me one person's paycheck that wasn't funded with the sale of that business's products.
Yes. That's why we're here. That's why we're doing How to Sell More podcast, because it's the greatest need. It's the number one driver. It matters so much because everything that we have, all of the profits, all of the revenue, all of the additional resources and the R&D and the staff and everything you can do to invest in your future and build an amazing organization comes from sales. So let me ask you, Jeff, just to wrap up real quick, what would be your number one tip, your number one strategy, your number one takeaway for the audience in terms of selling more?
Yeah, I think that it is, to kind of go with the marketing, content, branding piece. It's to like be really, really forward with your value proposition so that even while people are consuming that which you give for free, I assume everybody listening is, understands that like you have to give before you ask as a business, right? But that the whole time that's happening, everybody's clear on what is the relationship that is available to me with your company for free, and what is the relationship that's available to me with your company if I buy something. And to not confuse the two where they're like, wait, I thought I got that for free. Now, in my business, in the education business, what I say is, and I say this all the time, I say like information is going to be free or as cheap as I can make it, right? Like if I have to run a ton of ads to get people to a course, I might charge $30 for the course or something just to help liquidate some of the ad spend, but I'm going to make information as cheap as I possibly can to free. Transformation, if you want our help, you're going to pay for it. Information free, transformation paid. Therefore, nobody's ever surprised when they say, hey, well, I watched this thing of yours and I was really interested in the information and now I need some help applying it and I want to get this result. I go, okay, awesome. So you're ready to go from information to transformation. Here's the price.
All right. We're winding down from the action-packed conversation I had with Jeff, but don't just switch off yet. It's time for the 3-point roundup. Number one, there is huge power in being authentic when it comes to sales. Not only to be able to build a personal connection, but to build trust and, of course, to build a long-term client relationship. Number two, Jeff spoke to the fact that continuous learning and being really adaptable is crucial. So sales, like any other landscape, is going to constantly evolve. There's a feedback loop where you can be able to learn from your past mistakes and roll these in. Jeff really highlighted the importance of listening to the feedback from clients and different team members. And of course, it will help you develop more of a skill set. And number three, this is quite possibly the most powerful takeaway from this conversation. Shifting your mindset can propel you to more success in sales. So that means overcoming rejection and allowing rejection to really be a teacher as opposed to something that brings you down. committing to the process. Sales is as much about the journey as anything else. And of course, if you can shift your perspective, instead of viewing sales as just a transaction, but instead seeing it as an opportunity to provide solutions that can change your customers' business or lives, that can be the dynamic change that you need to stop feeling like sales is so yucky and start realizing that all you're doing is helping people out. And so I want to thank Jeff Lerner for joining us today. You can learn more about him on Instagram by checking out his handle at Jeff Lerner Official. While you're there, why not give us a follow as well at Sales Loop Brand? And one last thing, if you made it this far into the show, you probably should subscribe. Why? Because each week I share practical strategies and tips just like what Jeff shared with us today to supercharge your business growth and to boost sales. With that said, this is Mark Drager pushing you to turn those strategies into profits, and I will see you in the next episode.